in a position to really enable them to be more successful. And then when you enable the team to really move as one, then typically you're not confusing a market on your capabilities of why you versus your competition. But not only that, hopefully that supports closures of signatures of deals. So you're getting more adoption of your brand to make it easier to scale faster.
The Digital Transformist is a podcast produced by Caxy, a software and AI consulting firm helping companies play offense with technology.
Hey there, welcome to the podcast. Having a bit of a special episode today. I'm Mike LaVista. I'm the CEO of Caxy, and we help companies figure out how to move forward and win with AI and other innovative technology. Joined by Sean O'Leary, who is the founder and CEO of Transformative Ventures, and Chris Parise, who is the founder and CEO of Brook Trout Solutions. And the reason we're here today talking to you is that we found ourselves working on kind of similar problems from different angles. And I think the main thing that we see out there, and I'll give this a really high level summary. So if this sounds like you, stick around. Otherwise, forget it, turn this off. But if this sounds like you, this could be an interesting hour. And the idea is that we see a lot of firms in private equity making investments that make sense. That this is like a good deal. This what you're moving forward with seems like it'll make you a lot of money somewhere in the future. And then what gets hung up is executing on those ideas and getting tangled up in all the sort of operational and other issues that maybe you thought wouldn't have been a big a deal as they turned out to be. And so that's what we're here to talk about today is how do you break through that and actually get some wins? So maybe by way of introduction and talking about that problem a little bit, Sean, talk about how we first kind of articulated this problem, the kind of things you're doing in your world to work on them.
Absolutely. No, first of all, thank you, Michael. Good to see you, Chris. And we kind of connected multiple months ago, and we were taking a look at all the different angles on how we were having a separate but also a very similar conversation. And then that's when we started bringing those pieces together to be able to help solve that execution gap from the board strategy down at the field frontline perspective. The other thing we were talking about was value creation for the back office, but also how do we build that data repository and backbone that turn the data to insights that really pivots capital and resources through post-close on acquisitions or mergers or adding more capabilities. So as they're in growth stage or in transition mode, how do we turn that data to insight to really pivot, again, the capital and resources to support the front office? And then how Chris and yourself, Michael, and me and our firms and the people that support us as operators, how do we help companies get scale, but also be more effective in their story to resonate to their audience where their business is today? And I felt like as we take a look at building more value creation in this partnership between our three firms, it just made a lot of sense that we covered different gaps to help other people accelerate their vision and market.
That's great. And to loop in Chris here, I feel like the reason we connected is there's something I've seen a lot of times in these acquisitions where what gets hung up is really just getting two different or three different or more disparate data systems together and actually making something all work and talk together along with all the other things that go kind of in the IT infrastructure and the backbone. I'm curious, Chris, what are the problems that you're seeing that kind of got us together and linked this all?
You know, a lot of them are based around all of the solutions that come into it and all the vendors that start running towards the door when they find out something's happening on that. And they've got to tamper that down. And so what we do is we are agnostic to our look on it. We just want to find the best possible solutions for the customer. Yeah. And we represent over 350 companies. We're seeing a whole lot of different things going on right now from a standpoint of how do you bring those two companies together in a merger and acquisition and make sure everything's going to work well. There's a lot of moving pieces in that. And we have a really unique process that we do. We not only bring in a partner that has subject matter expertise in every area, but we also bring in all the solutions and the direct people that have the solutions in there. So we really are looking out at the customer side of it and saying, how do we get this fixed? How do we get this thing moving? How do we accelerate? And how do we optimize the next solutions these two companies are going to get?
Well, and if you're watching this and not just listening to this, you're probably saying to yourselves, can I work with these guys if I don't have glasses with giant black frames? The answer is we'll allow it. We'll allow it on special exceptions. And three, when I think about
what about it? a prize.
Absolutely. Maybe that's a giveaway. Today's giveaway is going to be new black frames for whatever glasses you're wearing. When I think about the problems I see, and the reason I was excited to start talking to you guys about this is that when we interact with a company that's thinking about anything in the digital transformation space, I think the thing I see the most often is really just underestimating how complicated it's going to be. There's a real sense of like, oh, this is going to be easy. And even though we've all heard of, the ERP implementation that took 2 years and $10 million and the failed, AI project and the e-commerce build that, didn't get anything right. We had to roll back to the old thing. Even though we know those stories, I think people, for some reason, still tend to take them lightly. And where we've had most of our success has been looking at, where can we align the strategy of the business, which is primarily going to be growth in a certain amount of time, with a platform that allows them to do it and not get in their way. And so there's a number that we work in, but for me, a lot of it has to do with if we can pick something that is going to do like the 80, the 80-20 rule thing. And too often we see people get hung up trying to go for 100%. We're probably anyone looking at their NetSuite or their QuickBooks or whatever it is going to see that all their money's coming from this top 20% customers. If you build something to suit them from a tech point of view, you're probably going to do pretty well. I'm curious if that resonates for you guys in terms of, when you see a company losing, Sean, you have this whole thesis around, we lose our footing or an execution. What do you see what are the main symptoms of actually this is going to go bad and here's why?
I feel that like when we go in and have these conversations, the general trend has been in these dialogues, and it doesn't matter if it's Europe or APAC or Latin America or in the US. It is around what does that common operating picture tell you? And when you build that centralized database, to be able to look at different insights and what are the 2 to 4 needles you're trying to do to move your organization forward in a more finite way. Sorry, I had a knock at the door. And then I'm going to pause. So as we take a look at these different conversations and we're taking a look at what really drives the needle, they need more adoption and they need increased revenue. So we're taking a look at where their RevOps and their pipeline is falling short to be able to execute that story, to be able to scale and hit the numbers that they're trying to achieve. And then one of the things that we notice is that things fragment across the organization based on competing initiatives. What are CFO greenlit projects? What is the executive intent? And then how does it reach the field? And is that story truly resonate to the audience based on where they are today? Are you inflating pipeline to protect your narrative to the market, either as a publicly traded organization, or you're talking to investors to get more capital? Is that pipeline real? People want to know, is that market traction something that I can resonate and I can get my story behind? And then the last thing I'll mention, and then pass the ball to Chris for now, is AI inside that infrastructure from a technology perspective actually automating the organization, or is it just adding noise and you're actually putting human in the loop to be able to take a look at your forecast to be more accurate where you want to take the brand?
Sean, I wonder if I could ask you kind of to drill into something that I was thinking of as you were talking. Is if someone's listening to this and they're the operating partner on one of these companies, what's the thing that you see people get most often surprised about when looking at a new entity in terms of the fragility of their RevOps and the pipeline? Where does it break that people get surprised by, do you think?
I feel that from a training perspective and coaching and up-leveling one's workforce, especially in the front lines, are you really talking to people that can move the needle? And are you actually then, when you take a look at budget, so let's say right now you're in May 2026, and they probably made their budgets in Q3, Q4 of last year, and they have 5 to 10 things that a CFO greenlit. And you got maybe an enterprise transformation project, and you got one-off business units and supply chain and operations and manufacturing, or in finance, or on a marketing perspective. Then how does that roll up? Then you got competing initiatives, you got fragmented sponsorships, and then now going back to the disconnect on the RevOps perspective on a 5-stage, call it CRM hygiene perspective. Are you actually dealing with someone that has authority and power to make actual decisions or are you doing with an influencer? And if you're dealing with an influencer, then the other problem is, then are you really helping them tell their story to get promoted internally? So not only is there a corporate and a business objective, there's a personal objective about how you're going to up-level your team. How are you making sure your team is in a position to really enable them to be more successful? And then when you enable the team to really move as one, then typically you're not confusing a market on your capabilities of why you versus your competition. But not only that, hopefully that supports closures of signatures of deals. So you're getting more adoption of your brand to make it easier to scale faster.
Yeah. Chris, how about you? Where do you see the most fragility and surprise when you get involved with a new company? What breaks down the fastest that people aren't ready for?
Well, a lot of it comes back to the people on one side that are used to, everything they've got today in their solution pocket, right? So they're trying to execute on certain things and trying to get that out to the market, and a lot of times that doesn't fall through to all the people in the organization. And then if you think about, if they're not getting it in the organization, what is the customer doing? Are they understanding where the company's going, why they're doing things? And what we found that really kind of works and helps in these situations is you got to really refine that contact center a lot. And the contact center has a way of helping the people, the employees in that. But the biggest part is you want to keep the customers. And if you look at it in a merger and acquisition standpoint too, you really want to see what that customer base looks like. You want to see what the employee base looks like, because we're seeing a lot of, pushback from the company being acquired and the acquiring company just on different types of technologies they're using. And they're going to want to say, well, we like this. We're going to keep this. And there's, we've heard of things in the background that people are just even, damaging what they can not to move forward with. And, they're losing people and things like that. It's a real tough deal to get together. But, if you really move it well, you plan real well to it in those first 90 days, and you get it secured and you get all those segments that you need put together, it's a good one. You can make that happen.
You drilled into the contact center being an area that you focus on. Where have you seen like a win? Like what's a time when working on that, focusing on that, streamlining that did something important for a company?
There's I tell you, the biggest part of that is AI. It's shown a real propensity to get the message out to what's happening with the message that's going out there, to get the feedback coming back from there on that contact center. We're seeing that a lot in areas, because they've got, you've got a front end on a contact center today that, if you've got a Spanish speaking person, boom, it switches right to a Spanish speaking Spanish speaking firm. But, the factor with that is just getting a win coming in and settling people down in the organization, and setting the employees that are getting, onto this new company, and the customers, what's happening with that. That's what we're seeing.
Hey, so when you say that, one of the things that we've added on the last few years is a change management process and like center in the organization, because, and anytime you're bringing, like, everything we're talking about here is change. And most of the companies that we're talking about have people that have worked for them for, maybe multiple decades, and they've done things in a certain way, and they've always entered it into this system this way, and getting them to think differently about this new enterprise and these new systems is pretty difficult. And if you're listening, I think one of the things that happens a lot is people end up running these phantom systems on spreadsheets, and anything, Chris, to your point, anything except the thing you asked them to use. And all of a sudden, if you're trying to run the business, you have a kind of a blurry picture of what's really going on, because people are using systems outside of what's happening. And maybe where Sean focuses a lot of energy is now you're stumbling on like easy stuff. Like, you should be able to execute on this stuff, and we can't, because we're still two separate organizations using two systems, even though we're supposed to be using one. And I can't tell. I feel like I keep waiting for the time that doesn't happen.
Absolutely.
Does that resonate with you guys?
Absolutely. Yep.
Well, I'll jump in on that. So when we take a look at back office optimization and then front office on the execution piece, from structured to unstructured data to first, second, third party data, you're looking at your competitive advantage on that story to really resonate so you can build top of funnel in your pipeline, or you're trying to grab market share from your competition from a global perspective. It's crazy how often we have these conversations and it's truly not an integrated business, and maybe 18 to 30% of their business is centralized in a database. So you're making decisions as an organization as you add capability in-house or buy it out or get acquired by a larger organization, or you're acquiring capabilities to fill your gaps against your competition so you can close deals faster or at higher rates, right, on the ACV to get that deal closed. So from a shared value language across the enterprise, I really feel like strengthens that positioning to really drive more consistent and faster closes for organizations.
Yeah. And Sean, talk a little bit about like how important it is that the brand message is understood so that you can actually get things into the top of the funnel. Because I always find that where people make a lot of mistakes strategically is not making decisions about what say to no to. So they're trying to take in everything. They got these new capabilities. So that means we can serve everybody all the time, everywhere. But talk about where you've had success and friction on trying to get that message across.
Yeah, taking a step back and then I answer your question. It's like, how do we create it for all three of us together, from Brook Trout, from yourself, and then our firm? How do we create a single enterprise operating picture from the technology, from the back office to run more lean? So if we're talking about 10 business units and we're taking a look at being able to understand where performance holds, where it strains, and where do we need to act as a sales force. And I mean sales force because I feel like everyone in an organization really needs to rally behind the field to be able to execute, to really scale that brand and your brand to the next level that you're trying to get to. So I think from a top of the line funnel, it doesn't matter about industry trends anymore. We really need to figure out and be more tailored to the organization that we're talking to, because their metrics might be different. So I don't want to mention names, but let's say you're a top 10 travel and entertainment company or industry. And, you can say, hey, this is what the trends I'm seeing, but they're like, well, we're not them, we're different. So how do you make people feel seen, heard, valued, and appreciated? And then not only going to make their brand successful, but you're going to make them and their people successful. So I feel like in those discovery phases and those first conversations, come in with a point of view to really build that trust and comfortability layer so they open up and start talking to you about the real problems. And I'll end it on this. The real issue is never the first conversation. It's about how do you build that trust to peel back the onion to figure out what's really not moving the needle for their organization from back office and or front office.
So that's a great framing. So I want to give Chris a shot at this one, which is, this happens for us too. The thing that is the first thing they bring to us, the first problem, is hardly ever the real one. And I'm curious for you, Chris, what does your experience tell you about a time people brought you something that ended up not being the real issue, and then it turned out to be something bigger?
Oh, I've seen that a few times. You really got to be careful on what you're doing with, as far as digging into the background. What is this company really, accomplishing that's you're bringing into them? And I've had times where, it just, you bring it in and boy, they can't do anything they promised to do. And that's, that happens out there, and we've seen it, and we've scrambled and worked hard to get it back to where it should be. And, it's just a company that wasn't ready to do what they were being asked to complete.
Yeah. I'll tell you from our point of view, I think the thing that makes a company miss the most badly on strategy is shiny new fun technology objects, because all of a sudden it makes everyone in the organization want to throw at everything that we're doing with strategy rowing together in a certain direction to go try and do this new thing. And the current thing, of course, is AI. And I can't tell you how many organizations I've talked to in the last, year, where an excited CEO tells us that they're trying all these different AI things, and I'm trying to get all these AI ideas, and forgetting that if you don't start with, well, what's the objective, what's the business problem we're trying to solve, you end up with AI things that do nothing and go nowhere. And the number of times we've had to advise a client that the thing they want to automate, maybe it costs someone a couple hours a week. There's like one, medium or low paid person that spends a couple hours a week doing something. it's not worth the time automating. It's really not. And you're increasing the complexity of the business because now there's a thing to maintain and look at and operate. Like sometimes manual is okay. I mean, as a tech guy, that sounds crazy, but you really want to automate something that creates scale. It creates scale and speed and competitive advantage and all these other things. And, automating the invoice upload may not be it. Sean, it sounded like you maybe had an idea on that one.
Well, you just made me think of something. Like I got my start 22 years ago at IBM Watson, and then taking a look at artificial intelligence, machine learning, and agentic, and what does it really mean for an organization to be, call it further successful, running more lean operationally and or to scale on the revenue side, right? And then so through that, and then taking your point on the AI, what's happening in the market right now? They're realizing that sometimes having a human is actually cheaper than trying to figure out the AI problem. But how do you do both? And that's where I think all of us can come together to really support an organization and figure out how to have AI, but also with human in the loop.
Yeah. Chris, what's your take on that idea of like actually, bringing technology to fit a problem and not just because it's the shiny new thing? I'm sure you've seen that cycle a million times.
We've seen it a little bit, but we're a little bit protected on that. Most of the solutions that we have, and they're saying, okay, AI is going to solve this for it. It's tested. It's layered on top of what they're offering the customer. So they've baked it real well in areas where they know they've got to bring that into and what it can do for it. And that's really in the network side of it. There's a lot of it that they've done great things in networks. Being able to say, okay, we need this network turned up in 90 days. We need it turned up on this one day, and boom, it happens. Everything gets activated. They've got data transferring everywhere. They've got security locked down at the edges and everything. So for where we at, and if you really look at it from a solution provider standpoint, and you start talking to them about their AI, most of them have it fairly well locked down.
Yeah.
And if they don't, when it's implemented, it's like, okay, wait a second, we've got tweak here, tweak there, and it's doing pretty well. So we've seen it mostly working fairly well for us on our side.
Yeah. Well, let's see what you guys think about this idea. One of the things that we've seen in the news lately has been all these companies, announcing a giant AI-based layoff, and then 6 months later hiring a lot of those people back. And when I think about for people, if you're an investor, if you're running one of these companies, something maybe that we work on from the people strategy as well as the technology strategy side of things, is that those things go together. And that there really isn't a really obvious play to wipe out whole parts of your business with AI, that it's a sort of a human enhanced seems to be the winning combination, at least in the work that we've been doing. And while we want to get you efficiency, for me, I always look at if you're going to create competitive advantage, something in the market that creates growth and interest, then you have to do something that's unusual and better than the competition. And if all you've done is wipe out a little bit of your workforce and you're using technology to get back to just where you were before, you haven't created any new advantage. So I think those people, those companies, those executives are in a way being unimaginative about the application of technology and AI. And for me, it's about how do we create a strategy for your people, your teams to do things differently, better, more interestingly. I'm curious how that intersects the work that you guys are doing.
Chris, you want to take this one first?
Sure. It's, when we look at it that way, we're usually pretty careful about how we look at that and what they have in place and what are the people in place and what's their skill sets. So we take a pretty cautious look on it as far as what do they really need, what do they want. We got to drill it down in, fit whatever they're trying to ask us to do from a technology standpoint and who they want to see. And so we're kind of, I would say, a little bit agnostic to that side of the market, just because we've got a pretty good look at what they're trying to do. And if we bring in the right partners, it usually it ends up as a pretty good play for us and the customer.
Well, I'll jump in on that. So I think that when we take a look at the pandemic, unfortunately, that's when I felt like we started hearing this like wave of the next change with artificial intelligence and what it means for workforces. fewer people, more automation, cleaner margins, maybe potentially faster returns. You're listening to Wall Street earnings calls, and they're saying that, hey, we overhired during the pandemic, but also AI is now allowing us to run more lean and efficient as an organization.
Yeah.
And then, Michael, you just said a few minutes ago that we might realize that we might have pulled the trigger too soon, but did companies want to have that narrative to the market that they were failing? And so they're using, AI to maybe inflate certain things that was maybe not based on reality or math. But then I think the market is starting to learn that harder truth that you just mentioned, that cutting people may not actually create budget room or create the returns they're looking for, or AI is producing what they wanted to that exists inside their organization. So I feel that the other thing is, from a hygiene and the data perspective on your resources and your capital, use artificial intelligence to better yourself, to be more knowledgeable, but just know that we as humans will still need to be able to, from a security perspective, cyber standpoint, to really be able to really scale it to the next level. I think humans still need to make those decisions, not AI.
Yeah. Well, so maybe circling the wagons here a little bit, I think the thing that we've come up with here together is this idea of an execution infrastructure for post-close value creation. And specifically around the stuff we've been talking about, we feel like we got a little bit of an angle on how to make that happen, how to avoid some of the obstacles. And Sean, this is kind of your brainchild, your baby a little bit. Talk about like what that means and what the value might be to people who are listening.
Absolutely. So through over 2 decades, kind of working with technologies and multi-billion-dollar spend and tech stacks, interviewing hundreds of people in an organization to attend business units, and figuring out ways to find 20% cost reduction based on mergers and acquisitions, other tech and other capability coming in-house. Then how do we automate the business by finding X dollar amount through technology to automate an organization, but at the same time is taking that centralized data repository, turning data to true insights that really accelerates the brand's vision, but makes the whole organization move as one. If you really want to accelerate your organization to the next level, you don't want to confuse the global market, because once you get to a certain size, on revenue, people do talk behind your back, and they want to know what true value are you bringing to the table. And if you confuse them, then that's going to stop you're going to have a pause on revenue growth. So then that's where we built something called Transformative Principles, which is a value creation for the front office, supporting the back office side of the house. So that's where this kind of relationship started, to be really supporting that integrated business, being a true feedback loop. So the front office gives insight that really feeds in. And then, Michael, you mentioned something earlier when we started talking about structured and unstructured data. You got a CRM, but I can't tell you how many, I'm not kidding, 10 to $100 billion companies are still using Excel to track their revenue and deal pipeline to the next stages, and then not the CRM. So why are we using technology and this awesome automation and AI, but we're really still tracking on the back end through Excel?
Yeah. Well, so
Michael, you see that a lot, don't you? I would think with the data.
Absolutely. I think that, creating a unified picture of an organization is kind of like step one for us typically. And it's one of those things where it's a moment where, kind of for the first time, you see everything clearly and all the things that you thought might associate do, and you've got a way to prove it. And what we want to see is organizations run their companies on reality, like the live in reality of what's actually happening, what the data says, not what feels right, not, I have a hunch about something. Like, let's actually get you a picture that you can work with. And then you can make decisions based on that. And you'd be surprised how few companies have the ability to do that, to both your points about, these spreadsheets running things, and you're trying to do pipeline off of a spreadsheet, and you copied and pasted something wrong, or that's from last month, and we don't have Jerry's new numbers. It's madness. And every time I go into a new company, I always think to myself, well, surely this will be the one that has it figured out. So if you're listening and you're ashamed to bring your spreadsheet to the program, it's okay. We get it. We've all seen it a million times, and I'm sure the things that we do in our company that are crazy. But there's something this is an area we know something about, can help you with.
And Michael, to continue on off that for this group here, for the listeners, and kind of where this partnership and combo came about from 3 sectors into one to ensure your success, is how do we close that gap from the board strategy down to the field execution by installing a common operating picture and revenue system that connects the different pieces from your brand vision to your leadership to your capital, living in pipeline reality, looking at your hygiene of the CRM and the workflows. So from online and offline, how are we connecting those pieces? And then that goes back to something we said earlier. How do we turn data to insights that really from the back office supports the front office being more efficient and effective to get deals signed?
Yeah. Well, so if you're listening and this sounds interesting, we're announcing that we are planning an event for the end of summer 2026. If that sounds interesting to you, I'd like you to use the DMs and messages here to let us know you're interested. We'll be doing it probably in Chicago and downtown, and details to come soon. But guys, great getting to talk with you and meet and talk through these ideas. It's really valuable to kind of see how these things intersect, and we get the most out of each of the 3 of our little our efforts here. So thanks for spending time with me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks,
Good to see you, Chris. Bye.
Appreciate it. All right. See y'all.
Thanks for watching another episode of The Digital Transformist. I don't know if you're a like person or a comment person or a subscribe person, but do one of those to get more content just like this.